Welcome to the Construction Disruption Podcast, where we uncover the future of design, building, and remodeling.
Yo, it's your boy Ethan Young, a content writer at Isaiah Industries and a manufacturer of specialty metal roofing and other building materials. Today, I'm joined by Todd Miller, my co-host. How you doing, Todd?
Hey, I am doing fantastic, and that was a wonderfully unique intro there. I love it. So I do have to, as I get older, I start to think about things. And I was thinking the other day, when I was younger, and I was more creative, more flexible, I used to play piano by ear. A few years ago, though, I started using my hands. Works a little better. So that's one of my jokes. I really, I would love to tell you a joke about construction. Would that be okay?
Yeah, that's fine, yeah.
Well, unfortunately, you're going to have to wait because I'm still working on it.
Too true there, yeah.
So one more quick story. This is a story. So everyone, I think every kid goes through this. For me, it was in second grade. They sent us out and we had to collect leaves and create a leaf collection. Did you even, I mean, you're a lot younger than me, but did you have to do that too?
I kind of remember that. I don't know. Maybe it was more bug collection for me, but...
Well, okay, I had bud. That was seventh grade. Second grade was leaves. Yes, I was the kid who went out and collected poison ivy leaves, not knowing what I was collecting. I was completely covered head to toe, with poison ivy. But, one of the things we used to do with leaves, so did you do this when you collected, maybe you didn't collect leaves? We used to put them between pieces of wax paper and run an iron over them, and the wax paper would kind of melt into the leaf and kind of preserve it and make it shiny and all that stuff. So that was kind of a cool thing we used to do. But one thing I learned through that was you never wanted to do that with a four-leaf clover because you sure don't want to press your luck.
Oh, geez.
Hey, I'm good to go now. I got those all out of my system. Yo, boy, Ethan.
Now we can make it on to the rest of the show. But before I introduce our guest, I do want to bring up that we're doing challenge words this episode. So if you haven't listened in before, each of us have chosen a unique kind of interesting word that we're going to fit in the conversation. So keep an ear out for those, and then we'll let you know at the end of the episode if who was successful in fitting it in, who missed it, but it's always a good time. So I do want to say today we're joined by our guest, Chris Duprey, Chief Customer Officer at Impact, which is a sales and marketing training company that helps businesses grow. So welcome to Construction Disruption, Chris. How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Todd and Ethan.
Thanks. Yeah. So I wanted to start by diving into a little bit how does Impact help businesses grow? What is your how do they kind of get things going?
Yeah. So the shortest answer is we help companies leverage a framework called They Ask, You Answer.
Okay.
Which is a book that my close friend Marcus Sheridan wrote based on his experience as a pool guy. There you go.
Yeah.
So like many others out there, we used to be, I don't know that many others used to be, but we were one of the original HubSpot partner agencies.
Okay.
We were an inbound marketing agency with all the things that is. And then over the years, we found that wasn't really working the best way. And what was They Ask, You Answer. So we partnered up with Marcus and merged his company with ours. And now Impact helps companies bring the Ask You Answer to life in their organizations. And on top of that, we also will help sales leaders and leaders in general communicate more effectively, work through their sales processes, work through sales communication, the way that really you interact with your buyer. So those are the types of training and coaching that we do to help folks grow.
So one thing I want to throw in here real quick, if I can, Ethan. So They Ask You Answer is a book that I had bought right when it came out of the gate. And one of the things that impressed me was, and I wasn't aware that Marcus was a friend of y'all's, but, was that he was a swimming pool contractor.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, it was such real world stuff and very applicable, I think, to our audience members, which is made up of a lot of contractors, home improvement contractors, GCs,
Yeah.
architectural and design firms. So, man, I'll tell you, when you read this book, you just all over it. You capture nuggets and glimmers that are like, gosh, that's me. That's something I can utilize right away. So cool stuff.
Yeah. Now, here's the thing, though, for some of your audience, right? And so, in a past life, post Army and pre Impact, I ran business development and growth for an architecture firm.
Okay.
And we started trying to do this because I was there, and my friend Bob had introduced me to Marcus, and I'm like, yes, we got to do it. And they decided they didn't want to do it anymore. That, by the way, is when I went to go work at Impact.
Wow.
But here's the thing. If you're an architect, you likely say to yourselves, well, my work speaks for itself.
Mm-hmm.
Trust me, that's not the case.
Mm.
All buyers want to know those things that they ask you answer tells us that we want to answer, because it's true when we buy stuff, right? We want to know those basic fundamental. What does it cost, or what's my budget? What are the blah, blah. We go into the ask you answer if we want. But the idea is, for a home improvement, for a remodeler, for construction, you're going to read it and go, duh, this is perfect. Designers and architects might be like, oh, well, they're selling products. I'm a service, and I'm telling you, it works with those. And I personally have coached an architecture firm to do this, and it's been game changing for them, more on the customer journey part than on the acquisition part. But it's just helped their whole, design process actually be more, client centric and simpler for them to do. Right? Yeah, like truly being customer focused versus not, and it's made their communication so much better. And by the way, everybody finds them, because they're actually answering questions that you have as an architecture firm, right? So I just, because you brought that up, Todd, I want to be clear, like, it works in all these different scenarios because it's not about the industry. It's about people buy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter what the stuff is. We're going to buy it, right?
Good. Yeah, and I could see, especially with architecture, we talked about in past episodes, sometimes people aren't sure like whether they need an architect for their project or whatever. There's a lot of confusion, a lot of like uncertainty, a lot of people that maybe haven't used an architect before. So someone who's using those kind of principles and is giving them all that knowledge, like that's a massive benefit for them.
Yeah.
And I think we'll touch on they ask you answer a little later, but I did want to touch on what you do at Impact first. So in your LinkedIn bio, it has you as Chief Customer Officer, but you also are coach, speaker, and co-creator of the Mastery and Certified Partner Program. Can you touch on a little bit of what you do in each of those roles?
Yeah. So again, my journey has just been, I'm sure that everybody says their journey's been unique, but I fell out of airplanes for a living for a while, and
definitely unique. Yeah.
Like I was an Army officer for a decade. And then I came out and came into business, right? And so when I started Impact, I was actually the chief operating officer.
Okay.
And we were about a 30-person company doing traditional inbound stuff. And over the last few years, we converted, changed, grew the company, and I moved into more of a internal coaching role.
Gotcha.
And then built the Mastery program, which is, so our Mastery programs are, they ask you answer Mastery, right? How do we teach folks how to do that? So I built that. And then after you build something, you have to be the person that does it first, right?
Mm-hmm. Test it out. Yeah.
Yeah. So I probably coached 50, 60 companies through the ask you answer and sales. And so I still coach about 5 companies at a time now. Go out and speak, do workshops, all that stuff. While also running the entire customer journey at Impact, right? So from the moment that you're aware of us, how do you get into a conversation? How do you learn from us? How do you get into a conversation with us? How do my coaches take you through and get you to be a member with us? And then how well do our coaches execute that? All of that, it falls under me as the chief customer officer. So what do I actually do? I spend a lot of time watching sales calls, client calls, giving feedback, coaching folks, and doing things like this.
Okay, interesting.
Awesome. I spend most of my time in my office watching Netflix, so I admire that. That's good.
Nice.
There you go. I did want to. That's interesting that you bring that up, though. I mean, I was researching the website, of course, for the episode here, but I even noticed that they ask you answer in terms of you guys had all the. I think it was a page specifically about how impact differs from a traditional inbound marketing page, and I found that really interesting to kind of dig into. And so even just seeing you guys use that on your own site, I think that's a cool layer. Where you're using it on your own site and helping other people implement it too.
Well, it's that whole thing. You got to eat your own dog food, or you got to drink your own champagne, right? Like, it'd be really hard to coach people on a system if we didn't do it.
Yeah.
Just like it'd be really hard to coach a sales team on how they should sell and communicate with their buyers better if in our sales process we didn't do that.
Absolutely, yeah. Next, I wanted to touch on, and you mentioned it again, your military service. How has that experience kind of affected, because I know you've been in a couple leadership roles with Impact. How has that affected that, and then kind of where you ended up?
Yeah, so I think I definitely wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if I hadn't done what I had done, right? So, like I said, I was an infantry officer. I was an advisor to the Iraqi Army in 2009, 2010. Then, I commanded a company in the 82nd Airborne Division, and the funny thing that sort of comes together is the problems I had as a company commander are the same problems that I had as the chief operating officer or in my role today, because they're all human problems.
Yeah.
They just show up a little bit differently, right? And so then you add in marketing and all this stuff, and it's like, so how does marketing or sales fit in? Everything's about influence, right?
Mm-hmm.
And educating and influencing. Well, that was the same thing I did as an Army officer. But if I was to say, like, what's the biggest takeaway for me, though, is you can't, to be successful as an Army officer, you have to have initiative. And I would argue to be successful at anything, you have to be proactive and have initiative.
Yeah.
And so, I got like a doctorate in that, being in the 82nd. And now I try to bring that to, civilian life, which is not always exactly like, you don't always have folks that are as driven, but luckily, the companies we work with are full of leaders that have that same gene.
Gotcha.
The folks that I get to work with at Impact are filled with that same gene. And so, while I'm not wearing a uniform anymore, like, I've still got that same team mentality here with the crew.
Yeah, no, that's really powerful, especially for what you're doing now.
Yeah. Well, and it's tough. I'll tell you, I was lucky and had two people really take a risk on, at the time it was like a 33-year-old just out of the Army guy.
Mm-hmm.
And then another that was like a 35-year-old just out of the Army guy, right? These business owners that took a risk to say, hey, you don't have a ton of experience, we're going to bring you on. And that's allowed me to get all of that and be where I'm at today.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for your service to our country, by the way.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Appreciate that greatly.
Yeah. One more thing I want to touch about on you before we get into more what Impact does is I thought it was interesting in your intro video on your bio page, you mentioned meditation. Is that something that's kind of affected your life and been a part of it? And
oh yeah. I mean, Army officer, high strung.
Mm-hmm.
I used to say quick flash to bang, right? So when something doesn't work, you're right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't work so well. Well, it didn't work well when I was in the Army, but it doesn't work well leading teams or just being an individual contributor, right? And so, this was back before my days at Impact, but I was really struggling to make the transition, really struggling to understand how to take everything I knew, but like move it forward.
Yeah, kind of translate
And I
it.
listened to a podcast, somebody talked about meditation and how they used an app or whatever, and it helped them. And so I downloaded that app. I sat in my office that morning and I did it. And I went, wow, this is crazy. And from there, I went on this whole journey that we don't have to get into. But long story short is I've been on some silent retreats. I've done all this stuff. And what it has allowed me to do is separate or almost slow down what's happening. So that sense of everything happening to me doesn't really exist anymore. It's like it's all happening, and it's allowed me to not lose my mind, but to put there's some anger, frustration, or bad thing over here. Okay, I can't make it just magically go away. So how do we attack it to get to what we actually want to get to, right? And so that's where that has helped me do it instead of freaking out and being at 10 all the time, right?
I'm kind of curious, and I think that is a really interesting juxtaposition, from military officer and now meditation and working in business. But what does that meditation look like for you? I mean, is this every day, a couple times a day?
Yeah. Good question. So back when I first got into it, was like 10 minutes a day.
Mm-hmm.
That then led into 30 minutes a day. That then got to an hour. And at the peak of, I was going through other things in life as well, but there was about a year that I did 2 hours a day. And so it would be an hour at about 4 a.m. and an hour at about 9 p.m. Right. And now today it's, 10 minutes here or there. And it's a lot more living the practice than sitting on the cushion over and over and over again. But I say that, but when life is getting hard, I am right back to being like 30 minutes every day on the cushion because it centers me. But as everything evolves, like I'm not dedicating as much time to it as I had.
Say 2 hours a day is going to cut into my Netflix and The Office time.
Yeah.
But I can
Gotta be careful with that.
Yeah. Well, I was wasting a lot of time between midnight and 5 back then.
One last thing I would touch on real quick, and then we'll move on. So is it more of like you got it yourself, or there's no like Master Yoda, pulling like that you had to learn from? It's just you kind of learning it on your own, or?
Yeah. So I used some apps back in the day. Then I read a whole bunch of books, and I did actually work with a teacher.
Okay.
For about 1.5 years. And she's actually the teacher I worked with is the teacher that's like Apple meditation. Her name's Joanna Hardy. I used to do an hour with her every other week or something like that.
Wow.
Very cool.
For a bit. Yeah.
Okay. So now kind of switching gears a little bit, touch on more what Impact does. I want to ask I kind of highlighted a little bit already with that page on your website, but what is it that makes Impact special for clients? What is it that kind of makes you guys different than a normal?
So here's what I'd say is I don't think there's anything special about what we are, other than to say we are coaches and guides that are going to hold the mirror up for you. Right. So the folks that we aren't like, if you want somebody to do all your stuff for you, that's not us.
Okay.
But the thing that you're going to get is incredibly frank guidance and coaching from our team that is embedded in the They Ask You Answer world. Right. And so, we've spent hours and hours and hours training, days and weeks, like training our coaches, not only on how to communicate, but on They Ask You Answer with Marcus as the head coach of our coaches. Right. And so we are constantly thinking about how does They Ask You Answer apply? How do the principles apply? And so what we're going to do is go into a business and work with the CEO, work with those folks and say, what do you like? Where do you want to be? What needs to be true to get there? And how are we going to do it? and then we hold them to that as they go, right?
Gotcha. Yeah.
Because, you don't have to be a mathematician to know that there's only a couple ways that you can grow a business, right? You can sell more. That's really it, right? You can sell more.
Yeah.
But how do you do that? Okay. And so when it comes down to it, it's like, especially founders sell a certain way. But guess what happens when you get to a certain point where the founder's not selling, you have other people that come in that try to sell the way that the founder did. Well, guess what? It doesn't work, right? Because they're not the founder. And so you have to be educating at that point. And for a lot of folks, it's really tough to see that. And so as we go through, we make leveraging the ask you answer easier, because you're not going to make the mistakes that, say, if you did it on your own, you would make, right? And then you get grumpy, not grumpy, but you get bald dude from Connecticut that's sitting there saying, hey, why didn't you do this week? Well, we had all that. Well, no, that's crap. like you're either doing it or you're not. It's so for folks that have read the book, I'll talk to people that are like, yeah, Chris, I read them. I'm such a fan of the Ask You Answer. And I'll say, great. Have you written an article about the best, XYZ in the area?
Yeah.
Well, no. Have you written your cost and price argument? Well, no. Then you don't love the Ask You Answer. You love the idea of the Ask You Answer, right?
It's a good distinction to make.
So that's so back to what makes Impact special is that's what we do, right? Now we have a community of people that are doing it. We have we have all this stuff, but it's really to get like-minded folks doing the right things and trying to induce more trust, build more trust with their buyers, because we all know that that's the business that we're all in if we actually want to succeed.
I think to me it comes across as, and I hate to reduce it to this simple of analogy, but it's maybe a traditional inbound marketing agency is giving someone a fish, and this is teaching someone how to fish. I think that's how I was looking at it.
I mean, it's not oversimplified. That is the thing.
Gotcha.
So it's like you're a content writer, Ethan, right?
Yeah.
For your organization. Yeah. Well, check it out. You will always be better than outsourcing it to somebody else to write about your company.
Yeah.
There's no way that an outsourced copywriter can be better. Same thing happens with video, right? Same thing with sales. One of the things that blows my mind is how we have companies today that do sales outreach for you and guarantee meetings. I don't get it. I don't know how that works. I mean, I get what their models are, but unless you're selling stuff that's just a commodity, you're never going to, those aren't ever going to work. They're just not, because they just hit you with the problem and they don't actually understand the buyer, nor do they know how to talk about the product or the service.
Yep.
Right? And so this is the types of things that companies need to own if you want to be successful. Thinking that you can outsource any part of your growth and development as a company is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life.
Good point. I love it.
Yeah. I do want to touch on, if you don't mind, can we kind of go into a little bit of the Ask You Answer and how that applies to companies? Yeah.
Yeah. So in a nutshell, right? So there's a couple things that we should talk about. The first is buying behaviors changed over the last 20, 30 years, right? I mean, I remember as a kid, my mom and dad walking into a big box store, and I don't remember what it was. Maybe it was Circuit Cities back in the day. I'm not sure what it was, but we're going to get a new TV, right? And because I remember growing up, we had one of those that had the push button, on and off. And then it was now time to get a real TV, right?
I remember crank start TVs.
Yeah, there you go, right? But my dad had no idea what he wanted. He had the newspaper clipping, he had the circular from the store. Walk in, and there's the sales guy on the floor, and I remember watching my dad talk to this guy for like 45 minutes about what TV we should get or whatever, and then we bought a TV. But think about today.
Oh yeah, it's way different now. Yeah.
Talk to anybody about what
Yeah.
TV you want to get, right?
Yep.
You do all your research. You know exactly what you want. And most of us don't even leave our house to go get the TV. Most of us just have it sent to us,
Yeah.
right? So some of you might say, well, that's a product, Chris. Yeah, but don't let that just be the thing. Everything we do now, we research because we have much more than the yellow pages, which for the younger folks, that was a thing that had companies in it, right? But today, no matter what it is, we are researching stuff on the internet. And when we don't find what we want, what do, Todd? We hit the back button, right, brother?
Yep.
And then we go find something else, right? So,
Yep.
so whether you want to accept it or not, each of us goes to the internet. Because here's the deal. If we don't know the answer to a question, the first thing that we're doing is picking up our phone and asking, the Google machine, what's up? Okay, so that's a premise that we all just have to accept. Whether you're an architecture firm, a roofing company, a design build company, whatever you are, people are eventually going to type in a question that they would normally 20, 30 years ago have asked you. They're going to ask a computer. Fact.
Yep.
So we have a choice. We can answer those questions, or we can pretend that the world hasn't changed. And if we pretend the world hasn't changed, we're not going to grow, right?
Mm-hmm.
But so then the next thing I talk about with folks is like, what is Google's main mission in life other than generating revenue through ads? Right? So take that off.
Yeah.
But Ethan, what is Google's prime reason for existence?
Well, they deliver information to people that are looking for
Right.
it. Yeah.
Right. And here's the thing. They answer people's questions. So they want to give you the best answer to the question that you ask it.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you answer those questions and people go to that site and then they actually stay there and read the thing and then click on other things there, Google's like, ooh, I gave them the right answer.
Yep. Exactly.
By the way, this is an idiot's way of breaking down search engine optimization. Okay. But so then what does they ask you answer? It's saying, okay, well, what's the stuff that we all care about as buyers? Okay. And now Marcus didn't start this way. He started by just going, I'm going to answer all the questions because his company in 2008, 2009, when the market crashed, lost almost all their money. They were about to go bankrupt. So he found HubSpot. He heard about content marketing. Dude was like, you know what I'm just going to do? I'm going to answer every question that ever gets asked of me. So he did that. And he would go home at night after a day of sales calls and he would just write. And then he started looking at the data. Well, what were people finding him for? How much does a fiberglass swimming pool cost?
Yep.
All kinds of things on cost and price. Well, let's take a minute to say, no matter what we're buying, we care about what it costs.
Absolutely. Always,
or at a minimum, we care about the budget and we want to understand how pricing works in the industry or the service that we're getting, right? All of us, we all fundamentally want to know that. Well, we call that number one on the big five is cost and price. All right. The next thing he found is people wanted to know what are the problems with his swimming pools.
Okay. Interesting.
So think about what do we want? You don't type into Google, how awesome is a BMW? You type in, what are all the things that are going to go wrong if I buy a BMW? Right? That's what we do.
Yep. Absolutely. I've done that. Yeah. With my car.
Because we don't want to make a mistake when we buy something.
Yep.
Or we want to know. And now here's the thing is somebody's going to tell you, like an American car company is going to say BMWs are way too expensive to maintain. Boy, wouldn't you rather BMW told you that if you were interested in buying a BMW?
I think it would be kind of refreshingly honest. Yeah.
Correct. Right. And so we have to talk about the problems inherent in with our product or service and inherent in our industry because people are looking for that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So problems articles are the second part of what we call the big five.
Okay.
Then we naturally like to compare and contrast stuff, right?
Oh, yeah.
Todd, you're talking about back in second grade or fifth grade with leaves. Like I just remember when we learned how to write essays, it was compare and contrast these two things, right? Well, guess what? When you go to buy something and you have options, I bet you everybody listening has done this search query if you're going with two things, A versus B.
Yep.
Sure.
Yep.
Right? Like it just happens.
Oh, yeah.
Metal roof versus asphalt shingle. But insert whatever, those things are what we naturally want to know because, again, we don't want to make a mistake.
Yeah.
Well, Marcus found for him, and this is all in the book, but like people wanted to know the difference between fiberglass versus concrete versus liner from a swimming pool standpoint. So he has a choice. I can write about it or I can let somebody else do it.
Yeah. Wow.
But we know people are comparing those things, right? So comparisons and versus are there. And then we have best of. Think about when you think of like you travel to a city, like what are the best restaurants near me?
Yeah.
Right?
Best spots to visit.
Well,
yeah.
Yeah. You do that with everything. What are the best guitar companies? What are the best guitars? What are the best X, Y? It doesn't matter. We always ask that stuff. And so we found that you got to talk about that and you have to do it in an unbiased way, which means you can't put yourself on the list.
Oh.
Right. This is, by the way, one of those parts where people are like, I love the ask you answer, but I'm not willing to do that. And it's like, well, then you don't get the ask you answer. So we got to educate people on their other options and we got to be above it. And then you get into ratings and reviews, right? And a great example is if you've ever searched for an appliance, like you've likely come across Yale Appliance, which is a brick and mortar site in Boston, Massachusetts, but they've written most serviced, least serviced. They've written all of these ratings and reviews on all the stuff that they sell because they service it as well. And it's helped them grow exponentially, right? But those are the big five, right? So cost and price, problems with your industry, comparisons versus best of, ratings and reviews.
Gotcha.
Okay. So that's the basics of like the content that you need to produce. And we found that when you write those articles, people start to gain more trust because that's the stuff that we all look for.
Yeah.
And if you think about your Amazon app that we all have where we buy stuff from all day, every one of those categories is on a product page in Amazon.
It is.
Every single thing. Huh. So it's naturally what us as buyers want to go after, right? So those are some very tactical pieces of the ask and answer, but the bigger part is we as businesses have to realize that we have to tell people what they want to know. We have to show them what they want to know. We have to sell to them in a way that they want to be sold to, right?
Yeah. Otherwise they'll move on.
Because it's all about educating and it's all about inducing more trust because we know that foundationally there's so many options out there for everything that we give our money to people that we trust, right?
Yeah.
And so by answering buyers' questions, you A, are building more trust, and B, you're showing up in Google because you're because what question I'm going to ask you, I've already asked the machine, right? So I want to be found by answering all those things and really being the educator. So that's in a nutshell, right? That they ask you answer philosophy, but it's always about building more trust. So you're going to sit there and say, well, I don't want to talk about this. And the question that you've got to ask yourself is, will that induce more trust with my buyers? If the answer is yes, then you have a responsibility to talk about it.
Yeah, I find that really interesting, especially if it's something that, maybe you consider a weakness or, maybe something that you don't want to highlight. But if you think about it, I mean, maybe it's a little counterintuitive, but if you address that, people are like, oh, okay, well then now I know.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the idea of the best time to address a concern is before it becomes a concern, right? I want to sit there and go, here is my big white elephant. Not like, don't look over there. like, oh no, over here, not over. Like, no, you've got to just say like, hey, listen, we aren't going to do the work for you. Hey, listen, we are going to kick your butt when you don't do the things that you need to be doing. If you don't like that, you're not a good fit for us. Here are some other folks to go talk to.
Gotcha.
And I'm going to tell you, in the home services industry, holy smokes, you want to talk about, think about this, whether it's your roof, your kitchen, anything home services related, we as homeowners are going to do the research because we do not want to hire the wrong person. And how many stories out there are there of the contractor that just has the pickup truck with it, right? That, oh, the project went on forever and he just butted it, like all of those horrible stories. So we do the research. The same thing applies on the business to business side, because while as homeowners and consumers, we're worried about our thing, we don't want to get fired when we're the employee that's making the buying decision. So you better believe that the B2B buyer is doing as much, if not more, research into their buying decisions today.
Gotcha. Yeah. No, that's
what this philosophy and this framework does to help folks is getting ahead of it. And the craziest thing, gents, is there are still industries that they don't do this in.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is huge opportunity for tons of folks. No matter what industry you're in, there's tons of opportunity to do this, whether you're a local business or you can do things nationally or internationally. Like, it just works.
Yeah.
I love that, because you're right. You know, the one company that can grab hold of that truth, that can really do something with it, is always the one that ends up being the disruptor and the game changer.
Yeah. And then let's say that you're a local company, like a local design build company, let's say, does remodeling.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you become the answer, if you become that WebMD for remodeling, you could be opening up new revenue streams you could maybe turn into a franchise that sends leads to other design build folks. Like there are things that you might not even be thinking about when you go and execute this. You might be executing it just to grow your current business, but the options that it has. So if you take Marcus's story, they did it as a last-ditch effort to save River Pools and Spas. Since that day, River Pools and Spas became a pool manufacturer and then sold the manufacturing business. So there's an exit that Marcus has had because of that. Mm-hmm. Then they franchised River Pools and Spas, right? And so now there's River Pools and Spas all over this country.
Wow.
And in 2008, they thought they were going to go under. But because they became the most trafficked pool site in the world, they've had all kinds of opportunity and good choices to make, good options to have. That can be possible for anybody that does this well and really leans into this idea.
Yeah. I guess my next question then is, after having heard all that, is there one thing that you would tell listeners who, like, there's just one thing right away, do this, like that's going to change? Is there one piece of advice you have for people with this?
So it's going to end up being two, because the first one is simple, is like, you got to go read the book. Mm-hmm. It's not hard. It's quick. You can even listen to it on Audible. Marcus read the second edition. But go read the book, and you're going to have one of two reactions. You're going to go, duh, this is exactly what I should be doing, and get mad at yourself for not doing it. Or you're going to be that outlier that's like, this won't work for me. I'm different. Yeah. If that's you, then disregard all the rest of the advice. But you're likely not listening to this if you're that person, right? But what's the one thing that they can do? God, there's so many, but I would say is go think about, what questions do you get asked in your sales process? Because this is not some marketing thing. This is a growth thing, right? It's a sales thing. And it's a culture shift thing. But you want to sit there and go, what questions do we get asked in the sales process? Why don't people buy from us? What are the fears, worries, concerns, or issues that come up? Write all of those things down and then start addressing them.
Yeah.
Because the idea is, if you lose mostly on price, It doesn't mean that your pricing is off. It means you are not educating people about how pricing works in your industry. You're not educating them on what you actually do and why it costs what it does. And you're probably telling them price after you've already spent 4 or 5 hours working on that deal.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're like, whoa, that's too much.
Yeah.
No. Start bringing that stuff to the front. Bring that to your website. Don't put your price list up, but talk about 80% of that article needs to be about pricing in your industry. 20% is how you do it. Right? But that's what you need to be doing, is figuring out one of those things and then using that content in the sales process and winning more deals. And then the shameless plug is go talk to somebody at Impact if you have no idea how to get going, because that's what we do, is help you not make the mistakes that most folks make.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I just want to play off that a little bit. So I love what you're doing by taking this book that is a great concept and then helping companies, live into it and holding them accountable. I'm a great fan also of a book called The E-Myth that was written by a guy by the name of Michael Gerber. But same experience there. You can read the book and say, yeah, I ought to do that. I need to do that. But until you engage his firm, to actually hold you accountable and make you do it, none of that stuff's going to happen. So I got to encourage folks, get the book, figure out what some of your questions are that you get asked all the time, go to Impact and let them guide you through that process of making it a reality in your business.
Yeah, there are some that can do it on their own. But the majority of our case studies, like companies that we've coached through, started that way and then went, this isn't working. It's frustrating. I don't know where I'm going wrong. And they worked with us for 12 to 24 months and have these amazing stories that have come out of it all. Right. So that's what I would tell people to do.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Chris. We're getting close to wrapping up here. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you kind of like to tack on here at the end, close to the end?
Yeah, I think the last piece that I want to tack on. So this is my personal mission in life right now, is to make buying suck less.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So I at Impact have sort of taken on this. I'm going to be the sales guy, the sales coach, the one that talks about sales the most, because I'm just so sick of having really bad experiences. So just think of if you bought furniture in the last year or two, just think about that experience. You walk in, somebody greets you, cool, but then they follow you around.
Yeah.
They tell you about the financing. They tell you about all these things, and they just won't leave you alone even when you tell them that, hey, I'm just looking, right? I want to end that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've seen is the way that people sell, even with everything out there that tells you not to, everybody sells with, hey, look at us, we're super great and you should buy from us. Here's every feature of our product or service. Isn't this great? And then they wonder why people don't buy from them.
Yep.
And so I implore business owners and leaders to go watch your sales calls. And if you aren't recording your sales calls, start recording them and then go watch them. Because I'm going to tell you, you will be horrified, most of you, at what your sales folks are doing. And it's not their fault, it's yours, because you aren't coaching them correctly. Because we aren't teaching them how to ask great questions. We're not teaching them to be the educator. We're not teaching them to actually find what is wrong or what problem that people have, so that we can then find the right solution or educate them the way that they actually need to. We are not buyer-centric in a sales process. We are us-centric, and that has to end. And so that is the mission. On top of getting people to do the Ask You Answer, the next mission for me at Impact is training companies to make buying not suck. It's very close to my heart.
Good stuff. And, I love that too, because how often do we see that salespeople get asked a question and it's one of those, what they consider sensitive areas, and they just start dancing. They don't just give the answer to it.
Yeah. Well, and they don't say things like, so this is in the book, and this is how you can leverage some content. But the idea of and everyone has experienced this. Well, Chris, I like what you guys are saying, but why should I choose you over somebody else? At that moment, most sales reps go right back into their pitch, right? Don't do that. Say something like, well, listen, if we're this far in and you're still asking this question, maybe we're not the right fit. You should definitely go talk to some other folks. Here is an article that talks about who we consider the best of the best. Guess what happens then? They're like, no. We think we're a good fit. Here's all the reasons why we're a good fit. Let's go, right?
Yeah.
But people don't do that.
Yep.
They go back to, look at how great I am. Look at all the shiny things that I got, all these awards, all these logos. Buyers don't want to get pitched. They want to know that they can trust you. They want to know that you understand what's going on in their environment. They want to know that you actually can solve their thing, and they don't want to make a mistake.
Gotcha.
And yet we're like, look at this pen. It's so beautiful and shiny, and it does all the things. Like, no, man, that's not the way to do it. And yet there are sales gurus that sit there and go through the same bad stuff that all of us see every day. It drives me insane. So that's my add-on.
Yeah, that's a great point.
To this,
yeah.
gents. If you want to hear more of my rantings on this and know how to defeat this cycle, that's what I talk about on LinkedIn, is sales stuff.
As we close out here, we do have a tradition on Construction Disruption. We call it rapid fire questions. So these are 7 short questions. Some are silly, some are serious. Would you be interested in doing rapid fire?
Of course.
Okay, great. All right, I will start with the first one then. We'll kind of alternate, go back and forth between me and Todd. So, okay, question 1. If you could take one person with you in a zombie apocalypse, who would it be?
The Rock.
Ooh, okay. That's a good answer, yeah.
Good answer. Question number 2. Are you a night owl or a morning person?
Depends.
Depends. What's it depend on?
If there is a band playing at night, then I am a night owl.
Gotcha.
Every other day, I am an early bird.
Nice.
Great answer.
Alrighty, question 3. I guess this kind of works with that. If you were a wrestler, what would your entrance song be?
Because it just jumped into my mind, I got to go with classic Hogan, I'm a Real American. Just because I grew up to that, right? And
Nice.
and there's too many great songs to pick from, so I'll go with that.
Very good. Hey, what impact do you hope to have on the world?
I hope that people can. So my hope is that people can just get out of their own way and find their own happiness. That would be the impact that I want to have.
Yeah, that's very admirable. Question 5. If you had to delete all but 3 apps from your phone, which would you keep?
Spotify, guitar, the Songster,
Okay.
which is a guitar tabs app, and Google Chrome.
Good picks.
Okay, next to last question. Is there a game-changing product you have bought recently? Something that just was a disruptor for your life or a real life changer?
I'm going to give you 2. I'm going to say business-wise, Chorus as a recorder of calls and AI that gives you detailed notes and all that stuff. So as somebody that watches sales calls, and Gong is in the same category, we just happen to buy Chorus. Those types of tools are game changing for sales leaders and leaders, right? For me personally, game changing. I just bought a Fender precision bass, and the funniest thing is, I'm a guitar player that has transitioned to a bass guitar player, but also played piano and all this stuff. And the transition to bass guitar unlocked the fretboard for me. And so now, because I'm playing bass in my band, I actually know where all the notes are on the fretboard, so I can transition to guitar and play more lead that I've never done before. I'm mostly a rhythm and a chords guy.
Mm.
And so that one purchase
Wow.
has just made me a better musician, which
Very cool.
is really cool.
Good stuff. We should have had Seth on this show. He's our resident guitar player and band leader. So anyway, you guys will have to get together sometime.
Awesome.
All right, last question. What would you like to do when you retire?
I mean, I think that's a funny word for me because I don't know that I'll ever really do it. But I think I just want to keep writing music. Like, so I would spend most of my day doing music, but I still think that I'm going to have this itch to help folks grow, right? And not grow in a dollars and cents perspective, but going back to that whole be happy, like really help folks get out of their own way. Because when I'm helping you with sales, I'm helping you with marketing, it is sort of in that aspirational goal of just helping people be happier, because when things are working, you're generally happier, right? So I would probably still do all those things. I would likely work less, but I don't see myself retiring and playing golf every day or any crap like that. Like,
Gotcha.
it's probably just switching out
Yeah.
the amount of work I do, and like the music to work ratio
Just
will
kinda-
go music more than work.
Gotcha. Yeah. All right. Well, I do want to, before we close out, recap our challenge words. So, Todd, if you want to go first, what was your challenge word, and did you get it in?
My challenge word was juxtaposition, and yes, I did work.
Yeah, I do remember that, I think. So, okay. And then, Chris, what was...
And then I kept thinking of times I could have worked it in a second time too.
Oh yeah.
but
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm not much of an overachiever. I just do what you gotta do, and then go back to my office and watch Netflix.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So mine was mathematician, and
Yeah.
I definitely got
Yep,
that.
I remember hearing that. Yeah. Good stuff. And then mine was Yoda, which I kind of had to ask another question there, but I got it in all right. So,
You did.
yeah, that was a fun one.
Good job.
Chris, thanks for the interview. What's the best way for listeners to get into contact with you or kind of take a next step here?
Yeah. So best way to find me is to go to LinkedIn, Chris Duprey, and just connect with me there. Follow me. Start a conversation. That'd be great. If you're interested in knowing how your sales team's doing, you can send a blank email to sales@impactplus.com, and it's going to give you a sales assessment. Or you can just come to impactplus.com and check us out. We got some assessments. We got plenty of information to help you understand if the Ask You Answer is right for you.
All right, thanks. And thanks for listeners for tuning into this episode of Construction Disruption with Chris Duprey, Chief Customer Officer of Impact. And please keep an eye out for future episodes. We always have a lot of great guests. And if you enjoyed the show, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or YouTube. Until next time, stay curious and open to innovation. This is Isaiah of Construction Disruption.
This podcast is produced by Isaiah Industries, manufacturer of specialty metal roofing and other building products.